Good morning, and thank you for attending the third webinar in our New Mexico Recovery Series. The series is hosted by the New Mexico Economic Development Department in collaboration with the regional recovery coordinators around the state to offer information and resources to help New Mexico businesses and communities. My name is Jennifer Myers, and I'm with the Economic Development Department. For everyone that has registered for this webinar, I'll be sending out a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the slides. We have a pretty packed agenda, so we may not have time for questions. If you have specific questions, I encourage you to contact your recovery coordinator directly, and I'll have all the contact information at the end of the slide. So let's go ahead and get started. The Economic Development Department received a grant from the EDA in 2020 from the CARES Act to not only aid in our economic recovery from COVID, but also to create strategies to improve our economic position going forward. The entire project can be broken down in the following three categories: increase economic development's capacity, improve access to capital and technical assistance, and develop a statewide recovery long-term economic development plan. So how do we address that? So as I mentioned in the previous slide, one of the objectives is to increase the economic development capacity. And to address the capacity issue, the recovery squad was created. And I'm the disaster recovery coordinator, and my focus is economic recovery through direct outreach and help to coordinate efforts to facilitate business growth. Felicia DePaula is our program development specialist, and she's helping with the statewide plan and the rural efficient business program. Alex Greenberg is our financial program specialist, and he's the point person for all funded projects and opportunity zones. And lastly, our newest member, who's just hired, John Winscott, is the newest member of our team. He's the Economic and Energy Diversification Coordinator. He supports renewable energy companies in New Mexico. Now, as you can see from the slide, we are working closely with all local, state, and federal organizations to communicate and collaborate on initiatives for recovery. I'm going to quickly go over a few state programs, but if you'd like to learn more about them, please contact me. I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. I would like to take the opportunity to highlight our Collateral Assistance Program. The New Mexico Economic Development Department encourages banks to make loans to small businesses in underserved markets. The department can pledge cash to cover a collateral shortfall of a loan in order to enable financing. This translates to cash support to up to 50% of the principal with a maximum of $250,000 for under-collateralized loans. The uses for the funds can include tangible, intangible asset purchases, startup costs, working capital, financing fees, equipment, and inventory. Preference is placed on businesses located in rural areas, minority-owned, veteran-owned, job creation, and generates income from outside of the state. To learn more about the program, you just can click on the slide that I'll send to you later. I also want to take this opportunity to mention another, I think I skipped one. I want to take this opportunity to mention an NMFA program, the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund. This program is a loan and not a grant. The program was expanded in 2020 session to make available nearly $500 million to provide loans to businesses that experience financial hardship resulting from COVID-19 pandemic. Eligibility is listed all on the slide. A business must have had an annual net revenue of less than $5 million in 2029 or 2020 and has experienced substantial disruption or decline in gross revenue. The interest rate is 1.5 of the Wall Street Journal prime rate on the date the loan is approved. Currently, the interest rate is 1.625. Now, the loan terms will be for 10 years. No payments or interest will be accrued the first year. Interest-only payments will be due on the second and third anniversary. After the third year, the principal and interest payments will be due on a monthly basis. Eligible expenses include ordinary and necessary business expenses. The loan amount is 3 times the average monthly expenses for 2019 and 2020, with the loan amount capped at $150,000. So I know that's a lot of information, but I will go ahead and pass it on over to the Southeast Regional Recovery Coordinator, Debbie Lee. Debbie, go ahead and put yourself off mute and put on camera, and you can take it from here.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our series, our webinar series. And as mentioned by Jennifer, we are all working as a collaborative team with the various regional recovery coordinators in the state. Southeast New Mexico, my region that I am responsible for, has 5 counties and 21 cities and 1 tribe. And you can see the map here: Chavez, Eddy, Lee, Lincoln, Otero, and Mescalero Apache tribe. And the cities are listed, and everyone is familiar with all of those, I'm sure. So this is our boundary, and it's all under the Southeast New Mexico Economic Development District, the Council of Governments. And this group of people work on business development and retention, transportation planning, and economic development. And then through the CARES Act and funding provided by the Economic Development Administration, we have been added, or I've been added, along with Hubert Quintana, is also a consultant, working with Dora Batista in Roswell. So that is our area. We'll go to the next one. So through the CARES Act and through the Economic Development Administration, there are approved activities, and specifically for the COVID pandemic, we are concentrating, all of us are concentrating on economic recovery and economic resilience. And so this is the definition through the EDA for economic recovery, which is to respond to the corona pandemic and to look at the economic injury as a result of the pandemic, and to work through pre-approved activities. And so for Southeast New Mexico, we are working to develop a plan, an economic development recovery plan, resilience and recovery plan. So I separated recovery from resilience because resilience is really in my opinion, one of the most important components as part of the planning effort, because it looks at how quickly can we recover, how tough are we, what's our ability to respond and absorb and adapt to the impact that has happened from this disruptive event, and how can we become more resilient. There are 3 areas that we'll look at: the ability to recover quickly from the impact, the ability to withstand the impact, and then to avoid anything in the future. I think we would like to all hope that we don't have another pandemic, but with the fires and the floods and all of the things happening, I think it's really critical that we all concentrate in our communities on how we can leverage our resources, be collaborative. And the greatest contribution of all is time, and your time in participating, the time that's put in developing these plans, and then also with the recovery coordinators through the state's recovery squad. In Southeast New Mexico, we've put together an economic recovery team, and that team represents all of the counties. It represents the counties and the cities, and then various industries that have a significant contribution economically to Southeast New Mexico. So our purpose in developing this plan will be to really look at how the region can anticipate the risk, evaluate that risk, and then come up with the ability to respond and have the capacity to manage any future events that could happen, as well as focusing on the economic, the comprehensive economic development strategy, and how we can grow our communities and counties within Southeast New Mexico. So if you go to the next one. So the first year, as listed on the previous slide, the economic recovery, we concentrated through our economic recovery team, which was created at the very beginning of the event back in March. We concentrated on what was the impact. And so through our economic development team, we had various presentations from local governments, the impact to cities, budgets, their general fund, the impact that this pandemic has had on oil and gas. We've looked at the analysis, we've analyzed gross receipts, we've looked at gross receipts tax, lodgers tax, aviation. Because as we look at all of the negative impacts that occur, there's always a light shine that could present opportunity. And so we have seen some potential opportunities as we've analyzed the economic impact. So the graphs listed for you here clearly demonstrate that Lee County and Eddy County in particular, Carlsbad and Eddy County in the city of Hobbs, they have had the greatest negative impact of all. So in 1 year of this pandemic, Southeast New Mexico has seen a negative $24,252,810.28. That's just in the gross receipts tax that was reported to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. Of that 24 million, 20,686,765 of that was Eddy and Lee County, and it's predominantly oil and gas. What's interesting is that in March, when we first began this pandemic, within 3 months, we did the analysis, and retail was second in the revenues that were generated for Southeast New Mexico. Oil and gas was the number one. And about 30% of all of the general fund revenues were coming out of oil and gas. Today, or at the end of the year, 26% of all the revenue is now retail. It is the primary indicator of economic benefit, whereas construction is second and mining is now third. So there has been a huge paradigm shift in the Southeast region, specifically addressing the loss of revenue in the oil and gas industries. What's really interesting in this analysis, and you can find this analysis on our Southeast New Mexico Economic Development District webpage, it will show you that after a year, certain communities began to recover, and some of them have actually ended the year with greater revenues in gross receipts tax than they did a year ago, which you can look at that analysis and see that, but it's kind of shown a little bit here on these graphs. I gave you the industries: agricultural, mining, utilities, construction. These are not all of the industries in gross receipts tax, but these are definitely the industries that drive Southeast New Mexico. And then above, this graph is showing you by entity the impact between 2019-20 and 2020-21. So without a doubt, Southeast New Mexico has really been hit hard, as most everybody in the state. Now, we as Southeast New Mexico Recovery Coordinator and the other coordinators, we are partners, as mentioned by Jennifer, with the New Mexico Economic Development Department, and they've done some great work. They've put on a virtual fair, finance fair in Southeast New Mexico. They have a business finance finder website. And then, as she mentioned, they're working on their state recovery and long-term plan. So there's a lot of things going on in Southeast New Mexico, or that has happened in the first year. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you what we're going to work on next. So the economic recovery team has met and will meet again here in the next couple of weeks. And we will be partnering with Purdue University, and we are looking at least 5 industries. Now, we may and can add additional industries if we want to. So the 5 industries that we're concentrating on in the next few months is going to be agribusiness, transportation, energy, defense, and arts. These 5 areas have significant representation in each of the communities. For example, Alamogordo has the base, and Roswell has a lot of agriculture. And then Ruidoso and Lincoln County have all of the tourism, or a lot of tourism. Roswell has a lot of tourism. And then, of course, as mentioned, Lee County and Eddy County have the energy. So these are the ones that we're starting with. And we're looking for and inviting any of you that are interested or know somebody that would like to participate with us in meeting in small focus groups. We'll be presenting you information and asking and discussing, communicating with you about your particular industry, one of these 5 that are listed here. So go to the next slide. So we're doing this through Purdue University, as mentioned, through Dr. Dr. Michael Patrick. Many of you, if you participated in the SET planning, he was the one who organized and orchestrated all of those SET meetings and SET plans. And he is working with us through Purdue University. He's leading that effort to do what's called a shift share analysis. And I won't go into all the details because of the time, but this is just a short demonstration of how we'll be looking at the national growth, the industrial mix effect, and then the regional competitive effect. So what we're looking for is exactly through job growth, the economic growth, whether it's in per industry, whether it's increased or declined, and if there is any regional factors that could provide us a competitive advantage. And so as we work to develop this resiliency, we build on economic strategies that really work to grow and expand and help the communities specific through various industries that show up in this job growth shift share analysis. We'll go to the next one. And so this is just a simple page that helps to more clearly demonstrate what the results of that analysis will be. There's much more detail in the regional performance analysis, but the outcome is, for example, in the energy, fossil and renewables, the 2019 report, this is 2015 through 2019, you can see the industry specific that outperformed, and then the industries that underperformed. Go to the next one, Jennifer. So this one is actually arts, entertainment, and recreation. I just picked two for the sake of demonstrating how the shift analysis efforts are going to result in specific information about casinos, sports teams, bowling centers, the industries that are listed on this sheet. It also provides what's called a leakage analysis. It looks at the top 15 industries by input. I don't have a slide, but I can tell you that it looks at how much money they estimate in millions was contributed by that particular industry, that particular business sector, and then what percentage of that was in the region and what percentage of that went out of the region. So in that analysis, you'll be able to look at possible opportunities to bring economic activity back into the region as a result of generating more revenues for your community and for Southeast New Mexico. So that's what we're going to be working on for the next several months. Go to the next page. So as mentioned in the first slides, we are working on developing a team that will build and draft a plan. And we want to invite you, if you are interested in participating on the economic recovery team and or any of the focus groups in the areas that we just listed, the 5 areas, love to have you contact me and I'll get you involved. And as mentioned, we're going to be working with Dr. Patrick, Michael Patrick, that's going to help us take the information. We're going to be meeting in August. We've dedicated a week. We're anticipating the last week of August to set up these meetings, and we're planning to have them in each of the 5 communities and working with the focus groups on their particular industries. So if you're interested in being involved in any of that, we'd love to have you. And as a result of this information coming out of the focus groups, that will lead to us completing and updating the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities analysis, which will then develop the plan. We will present that plan to the Southeast New Mexico Economic Development Board of Directors, and then also provide it to each of the entities. So our hope is that we build and draft a plan that is usable, something that is meaningful and can really help our communities in Southeast New Mexico, not just recover, but become resilient and be prepared for any future events that might occur. So with that, you'll have my information at the bottom, and it'll be at the end of the presentation as well. So again, thank you for your time, and it's a tremendous investment that we are very grateful for. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to South Central Region. All right, Joe, you're up.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for attending. I'm Joe Mcclintock. I'm from the South Central Council of Governments. We're one of 7 economic development districts in the state. We are commonly referred to as Planning District number 7. Next slide. Okay, I can see there's like a 5-second delay there. Okay, here's a snapshot of our community. We're comprised of 3 counties, Socorro, Sierra, and Dona Ana, a total population of about 242,000. Lion's share of which live in the Dona Ana community, which stretches from Hatch all the way down to El Paso in the border region. Next slide. Now, as the recovery coordinator, my set purpose here for this grant is to provide technical assistance to businesses, local governments, and all regional organizations, mostly to help them identify and apply for all the different funding out there. Now, that funding started off being pandemic-related funding, but it's kind of leaked into all the economic development grants and grants from on the private sector. So yeah, we do a whole lot more than just the pandemic-related stimulus money. Next slide. So if you take a look at our regional economy, and I have it broken down into the state, nationwide, and then the shaded area being our area, we have about 6,000 establishments that have more than 2 or more employees, and we employ about 84,000 people in those establishments. Now that works out to about 14 employees per business. So our region is truly made up of small businesses. Now you can see towards the end of my graph there, where the nation started hitting high unemployment, they hit 15%. The South Central region was fashionably late to the pandemic because we were a lot of rural communities. So we didn't start getting outbreaks until about 3 months after the state had shut down. And that gave us a little bit of time to help prepare for what was coming. But again, this was before a lot of the stimulus money came out. Next slide. Now, in the recession of 2010, we started seeing massive job loss, but it was spread out over an 18-month period. Obviously, the pandemic created a lot of job loss suddenly. So I kind of went back a couple of years to show that as the pandemic or as the recession started coming to a close, here in New Mexico, we were still suffering with a lot of high unemployment rate and just a lack of economic development. So we never really fully recovered from the recession when the pandemic hit. But when the pandemic did hit, we didn't fare as bad as the nation as a whole or even as the state. And it's kind of the odd diversification of the South Central region. We're not overly dependent on oil and gas. We're not overly dependent on travel and tourism, though that is a part of our economy. As most of us know, when you get into rural New Mexico, the biggest employers are schools, hospitals, local government, and Walmart. So we all became essential workers. And so a good percentage of our population stayed working, which was great, because then when the stimulus funds came in, that helped those in the service industries that lost their jobs. Overall, during this last few quarters, regional employment's down about 5.4%. And those are jobs that probably won't come back for a couple of years. If it took us 2-3 years to try to crawl out of the recession, it may take us just as long to recover from the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the stimulus funding that came into our area was a little bit of a saving grace. About 90.7% of New Mexicans were eligible for stimulus funds. So that's roughly about $330 million that came in just in the 3 counties, my region here. And that's a very conservative estimate. When it came to the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP funds, there was $3.4 billion issued statewide. And here in our region, that was about $425 million. So that enabled the businesses that shut down to keep their employees paid, and it allowed businesses to toe the line until the economy started to pick back up again. Now, you guys may not be familiar with the state and local fiscal recovery funds, but this is money that's going to the counties and cities to help them get back on their feet. It was $1.7 billion that went to the state. About $9 million will come to my region, the 3 counties. And those are funds that are going to be used for everything from water infrastructure projects to increasing broadband and just helping the cities get back on their feet from the revenue they lost from gross receipts tax. If you look down at the bottom part of the graph there, in the state of New Mexico, we had 42,000 applications, 81,000 per application. The first stimulus money, we all saw the news stories that it was gobbled up by very large corporations. The second round of stimulus, the ARPA money, had a precedent to prioritize small businesses. And you can see with the PPP loans, the average business that received funding had 10 or less employees. So that money really did go to the small mom and pop businesses in southern New Mexico. Next slide, please. So we're still working on the shuttered venues grants and a host of other grants, the PPP loans and the restaurant revitalization. Those have closed up. Those pretty much ran out of money before the application started rolling in. But there's still an ample amount of funding out there, and if not in grants, in low interest loans. And so if your business is doing okay, and if you were ever thinking of expanding, now is a really good time to take advantage of these low interest loans and help build the foundations, because we don't know what the future's going to hold for us, whether it's global warming, another pandemic, or God forbid, another recession. Let's take this opportunity to strengthen your business and maybe diversify some of your funding streams to help us weather the next pandemic. So here on your screen is my contact information. You take a screenshot or do what I do. I take a picture with my phone. And give me a call if you have any questions about not only my presentation, but the presentation from the other coordinators. Because even though we're all attacking this from different angles based on our local economies, we're all pretty much fighting for small businesses. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. Thank you very much for your time. And Jennifer, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks, Joe. We're going to go ahead and head to Eastern Plains region.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jason Espinoza, I'm the Economic Recovery Coordinator for the Eastern Plains Council of Governments, and glad to be here with you guys today. So I'm just going to give, I think Debbie and Joe gave a good overview of what the EDA money and some of the other stuff. So I'm going to give you a status report and some insight into some of the data that we've looked at. If you can go to the next slide, Jennifer. So just a real quick overview for the folks that don't know. Again, the Eastern Plains Council of Governments. So this covers the 7 counties in the Planning and Development District 4. So you're looking at Curry County, Debaca, Guadalupe, Harding, Quay, Roosevelt, and Union County, with several municipalities located within these counties. So this is your northeast quadrant of the state. Next slide. The approach that we're taking in terms of our economic recovery and resiliency plan and getting the data and really creating a usable document for the local governments and communities in the EPCOG region, here's the steps that we sort of take. We really want it to be community informed. So what we first started off with were dialogues and conversations with community stakeholders. So we want to make sure to consider the local context, our populations, and then the local conditions when planning for economic recovery. And I think it's been mentioned a couple times before, you know, our regions are distinctly different. So we want to get in and make sure that it's relevant and applicable to the regions that we're working with. The second portion of our approach is data collection and analysis. So really based off of those community informed discussions, where does that take us? Where do the conversations take us? What type of data collection do we need to take? What types of analysis do we need to make? So that we are getting data that's relevant to making recommendations based on the community-informed theories and hypothesis. Testing those developed theories. So, you know, once we have those community conversations, once we get the data, we're going to really work, okay, do those theories match? We're getting the publicly available data. testing the validity of certain theories, and that those will then guide our recovery strategy recommendations for the region. And then lastly, recalibrating of those strategies. Again, utilizing the local stakeholders. We will, again, being community informed to review the recovery strategy recommendations and then adjust those as necessary to meet the local context. It's going to be a continuous feedback loop so that this document, the recommendations, continue to evolve. Because I think one thing that we've all lived through during this pandemic, the last 15 or so months, is that the problems that we had at the start of the pandemic are not the same problems that we had in the middle, are not the same problems that we're having now. So things continually evolve, and we need to adjust our economic recovery and resiliency strategies to match with those. Next slide. So as I mentioned, one of the first thing that we did was have community conversations with various stakeholders in the counties and the municipalities in the EPCOG region. Those community conversations really focused on three things. So what was the pre-COVID, before COVID? What were the economic trends in the community? What were the obstacles? What were the opportunities? What was happening? Then we had a conversation with those same folks about what are the COVID era economic obstacles, talking about the effects of the public health order, the effects of supply chain disruption. So really narrowing in what were those obstacles that were created as a result of COVID. And then had really interesting discussions on the post-COVID economic recovery goals. So once COVID's over and we're looking at 3, 5, 10 years out, what are those benchmarks that communities want to look at and say, hey, we've recovered, we've moved beyond the pandemic and we're moving in the direction we want to go. So really work to identify what those recovery goals were as well. Next slide. In short, one of the things that really came out of those community conversations was that, the pandemic created a lot of new short-term obstacles as a result of the public health orders, as a result of many of the challenges. But many of the mid and long-term challenges to economic development predated the pandemic, but were magnified and accelerated by the coronavirus. So when we're looking at developing the economic recovery plan and strategies, we're making sure that we're not only focused on those immediate and short-term obstacles that were created by COVID, but we're addressing those long-standing obstacles to economic development to ensure that all the communities within the EPCOG region can thrive. Next slide. So one of the pieces, and I'm just sharing just sort of a snapshot of some of the data that we've collected so far and that we're looking at to make the recommendations and really illustrate some of the stories that we've heard from the communities, is looking at the change in the net revenue for small businesses, percent change in number of small businesses that are open or still open in New Mexico, and that the number of small business applications, so registrations that have come out through COVID. Next slide. So updated this, there's updated data as of June 30th, 2021. And when you look at comparative to January 2020, small business revenue, is decreased by 49.5%. And as you can see by the chart, it tended to decrease and was still decreasing as of June 30th. We'll see once the data comes in, as July 1, the state reopened with no capacity restrictions anymore. So we'll see if that has a positive impact on the small businesses. And we can see too, and Joe mentioned, the impact of the federal stimulus checks as well as federal aid to small businesses. And we can sort of see that, small business revenue does recover slightly in mid-April when the first round of federal stimulus checks were delivered. So we can see the impact on some of that small business revenue and activity. Next slide. Very similar to this slide previously, so as of June 30th, 2021, the number of small businesses opened, and this is specific to New Mexico, not necessarily the EPCOG region right now, decreased by 46.9% compared to January 2020. And that would make sense with the revenue impact, closure impact, and so, we have still a long way to go in terms of really recovering our economy. Next slide. One of the interesting pieces of data that we wanted to pull for folks to look at in the community was, although many of the small businesses closed as a result of the pandemic or are still closed, there were also many new people still applying to start a business, registering to start a business here in New Mexico. So this comes from federal data. The black line is 2019, the white line is 2020 in terms of the number of business registrations coming in per week. And one of the things that we just think this really shows is the resiliency of Americans, of New Mexicans, even in the face of crisis, in the midst of crisis here. People are still being innovative, because although businesses had to close, because of the health orders, because of the changing consumer behaviors, there were opportunities for individuals and businesses to fill specific consumer demands and niches. And I think that's what we're seeing here. So, people are still interested, people are still starting businesses, and there's a lot of opportunities, and as Joe mentioned, potential financing opportunities as well. Next slide. One of the things too that we added here is sort of looking at the national level and some of the lingering effects. And this is a conversation I think every local government, the state government, every economic development, every local chamber, every group business is sort of looking at. And sort of pulled this quote from a National Small Business Association that sent out a press release on July 12th of this year, stating that small businesses are making adjustments to their hiring practices to attract qualified applicants, as well as adjusting business operations to compensate for the lack of staff. Everyone's having a labor shortage. Small businesses are still recovering from the pandemic, but need to fill those open positions in order to get back to full productivity. And I think this is one of our current challenges. Although we're open at full capacity, the labor shortage, labor issues are really holding back New Mexico and small businesses and the economy reaching our full potential and productivity here. Next slide. Here was I just thought I'd share some of these findings, which we found interesting. Again, this is from, this is actually the National Federation of Independent Business, which is the National Small Business Association trade organization. And this, I won't read them all, but looking at, the supply chain disruptions, and, over 54% of owners reported that supply chain disruption is having a worse impact on their small business than it was 3 months ago. 22% of small employers are currently experiencing a significant staffing shortage, and another 18 are experiencing a moderate staffing shortage. And a lot of folks are making adjustments to their operations. Beyond normal hiring practices, they're taking a lot of different things to attract employees. 63% across the nation have increased wages. So we're seeing the labor shortage really change how small businesses are operating. And so we're looking at a lot of the data, making recommendations on what type of support, what type of assistance do these small businesses need in order to pivot and reposition themselves to be successful as we look towards recovery. Next slide. This is an interesting slide just because there's a lot of discussion around this again. So Morning Consults did a survey between June 22nd and June 25th. This is national again, but it was really interesting. Reasons for turning down job offers while employed. So the #1 reason in terms of percentage that was the response was childcare obligations. And what does that mean in terms of the need for, we look at economic recovery, a lot of us, we're focusing on small business, but we also have to look at, daycare centers, childcare centers, all these other components that affect a family's ability to go back and return to the workplace under normal circumstances. Unemployment insurance, health and medical limitations, the amount of compensation, school training. So this really provides sort of a snapshot so that we can look and say, okay, what type of support again do people need, not only businesses, but individuals in order to get back to the workplace and move the economy along. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Here, and again, that was just providing just a brief snapshot of some of the interesting data that we've compiled and looked through to make the recommendations. Some of the other things that our teams investigated and analyzed are looking at business licensing and tracking. How do we develop an early detection system so that we can see which industries and clusters may be having an upward trend in terms of business registrations? Which ones are we seeing a dip so that we can respond appropriately from a supportive and assistance standpoint? Impacts to the local tax revenue, COVID-19 mitigation analysis, similar to what Joe was saying, I think a lot of damage was mitigated by those federal funds, by state funds coming in. So we've done an analysis of what the impact in the community was on employment in the workforce, really looking at rebuilding tourism opportunities within the region, changes in consumer behavior again, so that we can support businesses as they adjust and pivot to those consumer behavior shifts, and then shifts in employee values. And so that's similar to what the slide previously was talking about. How do we assist employers and employees in the renegotiation of the workplace and compensation so that the economy can reach its full potential? So those are other things that we've also looked at. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And again, here's just my contact information. So my phone number, my email on there. And again, the counties that the EPCOG region includes. So please feel free to reach out. And similar to Debbie, again, we're talking about community informed. So if there's anyone in the EPCOG region that wants to have a conversation, talk to us about their experience, throughout the pandemic and now what their challenges are, that's going to really help us build better informed decisions, make better informed decisions and recommendations so that we can help the local governments as well as the communities as a whole. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Jason. We're going to go ahead and go to North Central. Kenny, can you unmute and put on some video?
You guys hear me, see me?
I can hear you, I can't see you, but.
Oops. Got this.
Oh, there you are.
There I am. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kenny Ping. I am the Disaster Recovery Coordinator for the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. We are the Council of Governments, the COG, for 8 counties up north, including Colfax, Los Alamos, Mora, Rio Arriba, San Miguel, Sandoval, Santa Fe, and Taos. We also work with non-metro areas, many of the small towns and villages, including, I won't name them all, there's about 20 of them, Angel Fire, Eagle Necks, Cuba, Cuesta, Raton, Red River, Taos, Town of Taos, Taos Ski Valley, Wagon Mound, Amos Springs, Las Vegas. Those are some of the 20. My focus is going to be a little different than from some of the others. I came on to the COG in February, and my primary focus was to be to track the American Rescue Plan, the money that was coming out from the federal government, the Biden administration. So we started looking early on at the language of the bill. But before we get into that, let me give you a little more of an overview about COG. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Okay. Slide. Okay. So these are some of the activities that we do. Economic development, we work with a lot of the rural and frontier areas, tribal collaboration with the 8 Northern Pueblos and the Hickory Apache Nation. We look at tourist-based economies for a lot of these small communities, frontier towns that depend heavily on tourism. And we've been working with Lionel and the labs and looking at opportunities, especially in the areas in and around Espinoza and Rio Arriba County. Next slide. This is the numbers of some of the industries that are affected. And this is dated back to 2019. I know that some of the information I'm going to give you is work that the COG has already been doing, because my focus has been mostly on the American Rescue Plan. So next slide, please. We do offer assistance with EDA. We are funded by EDA. The COGs are a part of EDA, Economic Development Administration, which is part of the Department of Commerce. We have recently submitted and completed our SEDS plan, which required consistency and collaboration with the state plan. We do work with the EDA Revolving Loan Fund. We are waiting for a NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, to come out. I think all the COGs have been patiently waiting. We work with local governments on CDBG planning and grants. We track and work with the local governments also, the ICIP, and planning and developing their ICIPs. And the second part of the ICIP process is also looking at legislative capital outlay. And then a couple of the other funding, available fundings, but we also work with two of the regional planning organizations, the Northern Pueblos and then the Eastern Plains, for regional transportation planning. Next slide, please. We also work with the VISTA programs. We brought on some recent volunteers to work. We have one here in the office, two in the office, and we work with the VISTA to bring on volunteers to work in some of these small communities. Next slide, please. Aside from some of the larger cities like Albuquerque, Las Cruces, and Santa Fe, we also manage the non-metro area agency on aging. So we run a bunch of senior centers. We help provide the services. We do the budgeting. Now working in 32 of the 33 counties. And that's actually a huge part of our operation, where we have a larger staff on the AAA side than we do on the community and economic development side. Next slide. This is some of the work that was done during the pandemic, and I'm going to move away slightly from this. If you can just read. I won't repeat it because a lot of this work happened before I got here. But let me focus on the work that we're doing right now, and let's see what's on the next slide. So these are some of the areas that we've been concentrating on, especially now with the broadband. There's been a huge pots of money that have been coming out. A big focus of the Biden administration has been on broadband and expanding broadband connectivity to a lot of the small rural frontier towns, but also in a lot of the what's called underserved or unserved areas. I actually sit on several subcommittees that are looking at broadband collaboration and opportunities. The thing that we've been learning is that you can have broadband on one side of your street if you live in the city, but somebody living across the street may not have connectivity. So right now, a lot of my time recently has been spent on working on a broadband grant. We are working with the counties of Rio Arriba and Santa Fe counties. Just for Santa Fe, we're looking at bringing service to the Rancho Viejo, Glorieta, down Highway 14, the San Marcos area, out near the community college. Rio Arriba, we're looking at part of their fairgrounds, which is just south of Albuquerque. The city of Espinoza, we're looking at possibly putting up antennas to actually provide connectivity and at least download speeds of 25 megabits and download speeds of upload speeds of 3 megabits, which is the standard FCC rate, to almost 1,000 homes in the city of Espinoza. So that's the grant is due in exactly 4 weeks. So we're trying to gear up and get all that ready. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more about some of the work we're doing. We're also working closely with a lot of the small towns and communities and villages on their priorities. They made it clear to us what their priorities are. Broadband is a big one, but water and sewer and wastewater infrastructure is also primary. A lot of the American Rescue Plan money funds can be used by local governments to bring back workers who were furloughed, also to help work with small businesses, and also important community anchor facilities like healthcare, but also to help small businesses, but also to help families. We are been working with the state on some of the state funds, like the rental assistance. We've been trying to work with DFA to have them tell us where they're not getting a response, and also with the homeowners and mortgage assistance. We've been working with the state and the feds on the emergency broadband benefit, which would help households and individuals pay for a tablet, but also help with their monthly bills. And that program will go on until they run out of money. So some of those programs, because of they're in existence and they will go on until they run out of money. We're trying to do a little more outreach. We're trying to figure out better ways to reach out to the media, to people, to get the word out. Part of the problem is some of these programs require people to get online, to apply through a portal. So as we kind of improve broadband connectivity, we're also asking people to get on, to have broadband, to apply for these programs. So it's sort of a little, working against each other. Where we're trying to, the solution is something that's not readily in place for everybody yet. We've actually been contacted by individual businesses for assistance. We've been contacted by several nonprofits who question whether they are eligible for some of these programs. We've had individual, like a food vendor needed help with a loan. He needed help with the restaurant revitalization fund. We've had assisted people with the PPP program. So although my focus has been largely on government and local governments, we will take calls from individuals who contact us through my contact information, which is also on the state website for economic development. And what we can do is try to gear or focus or steer them in a certain direction or get answers for them and then help them. And as we get information, we pass along and share it. I've had contacts with some people who are interested in like humanities or arts related programs, and we have made information available to them to get on either grants.gov or to apply for grants for those things. So it's not just local governments. So we get contacted by business owners and by nonprofits. If we don't have the answer, we'll help you find the answer. So my contact information is on the screen. Let me also say that we have a lot of updates on our website, which is www.ncmmedd.com. So feel free to contact me, but also feel free to check our website. And I'm open for questions.
Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we're going to move on to mid-region. Hey, Peyton, go ahead and take over.
Hi, thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Peyton Showalter, and I'm a regional planner at the Mid-Region Council of Governments, or Mr. COG, as we often call it. The map on this slide shows the areas that we serve, which include Sandoval, Bernalillo, Valencia, Torrance, and southern Santa Fe County. We provide technical assistance to these areas, usually through transportation planning, land use planning, and economic development. And our goal through our technical assistance that we provide is to help our region plan responsibly for the future. So an example of this is our comprehensive economic development strategy, which is that image on the left, that's the cover. It was just updated in 2020, and it's a plan that's updated every 5 years that creates strategies to help our economy grow in the mid-region. And the part of our work program that I'm going to focus on today is part of the funding that we receive to provide assistance directly in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. So in much of our typical work, we focus on working with local governments. So for our recovery efforts, we've been continuing this focus and really utilizing our connections that we already have with our community leaders to assist the businesses in their areas. And so when we first began this process, we reached out to our communities to get input on how they thought we could best assist the businesses and other organizations in their areas. And many suggested that they could benefit from increased information sharing and more training opportunities. So to meet these needs, we first started hosting a new page on our website where we have resources and funding opportunities for both our businesses and communities. And we also started a business resource flyer. So we send out a flyer to our communities every other month, and it provides information on new funding sources and new resources as they become available. And we chose a flyer format so that way a community could print it and post it around town, or they could post it on their social media page, upload it to a website, so that wherever people are used to getting information in that community, they can continue utilizing that. And another main aspect of our technical assistance that we provide is that we're available to help businesses, organizations, and our communities identify potential funding sources for either specific projects or for a specific type of business or organization. And we can also help to connect you to other resources that can provide the assistance you're looking for. Maybe you are looking for help with a specific application or getting the necessary documents together that you need to be able to apply. We can help find the right resource to put you in touch with. Next slide. So in addition to our information sharing, we are also working to expand training opportunities for businesses in our region. And with all of the funding sources that have become available, especially throughout the pandemic, they had really quick deadlines. So it was really important that businesses have their financials in order so that they're ready to apply. So we hosted a 7-session small business training course. And it really focused on bookkeeping best practices and getting participants ready to be able to apply for a grant or a loan. And on the right is the ad that we placed in local papers in our region, and we also had it on social media. And then through our newsletter and our website, we've also been promoting other free trainings that are available through other organizations throughout the state. Next slide. So lastly, in the next coming year, we're going to be using our recovery funds to create an addendum to our SEDS that focuses really on recovery from the pandemic and resiliency moving forward. I mentioned that our SEDS was adopted at the beginning of 2020, so it was right before the pandemic. So this one will address more recent events. And this is going to specifically address how events, including events like the pandemic or natural disasters, recessions, can cause disruption in our economy. And it's going to address how it's going to create strategies that businesses, organizations, and communities can use to reduce these disasters' impacts on our region. And so they'll help us be more prepared moving forward. Next slide. This is just my contact information, and we're really excited to be able to have this opportunity to work on recovery efforts and having this resiliency focus in our work. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you have, so feel free to reach out to me. And this is also the link to our website where we have our resources posted. And so I will pass it on next to the Southwest region.
Thanks, Peyton. Kitty, are you on?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I understand that a lot of people that are on this webinar thought that they were setting aside an hour, so I will try to move as quickly as possible so everyone has an opportunity to tell their story. Here in Southwest New Mexico, we have the same COVID economic recovery funding that is for a 2-year period, and it was funded by, thank you, the grant, the grant that we have was informed by the updated comprehensive economic development strategy, and because we had just updated that SEDS plan, we were able to decide to go with boots on the ground. So 2 of the programs we funded right away were, it's called Co-Starters, and also a software program called Synchronous, which, next slide, please. Which the Synchronous program is very similar to what some of the other COGs have mentioned in terms of putting together teams and providing resources to the various communities. So our community development partners in the 4 counties are able to access this Synchronous program and use it to support their local economic planning, to identify the targeted jobs that they want in their region, and to encourage startups, help site selection professionals, cross-pollinate in some cases, which I'll touch on in a little later, and also look for removing barriers that might be in the way for retention and expansion. Next slide, please. The Co-Starters program that we funded is actually for people that want to start a job, or need to start a business, or need to rebuild from COVID impacts. And also we have a module that's called Generate, which is targeting young people that are thinking about going into a specific trade or starting their own business while they're in the final years of their primary education, high school. This has been a really great program, and I am one of the facilitators. We've trained facilitators in our 4-county region, and so far we've held 6 core classes for the startup businesses, and a rebuild for those businesses that wanted to really reevaluate how they do business and be more resilient should something else happen to them in the future. And then 2 generates. Out of that, we've really seen a lot of new business startups and business reopening. You've got examples there on the screen. We have a sticker printer, we have a commercial sign maker, tour guides, RV campground, lots of makers, art gallery, textiles, steel maker, all sorts of things. And one of the things that's really great about this program is it is supporting what was mentioned earlier by one of the recovery reports, that there is a need, there is a demand for people to innovate and be able to take their big ideas and do something with it. So we're happy that we can fund this, and we will be continuing to do this for the next, throughout the 2-year cycle of this recovery grant. Next slide, please. Some of the other things that we've also done in addition to the Co-Starters and the Synchronous program is expanded our recovery technical assistance programs. We helped El Grito get additional classrooms, which was really important for our workforce to be able to continue to utilize the Head Start program that El Grito provides, so that they could, some of those frontline workers could continue working. Expanded services and improved the facilities at the regional hospital through an EDA grant. Operated a recovery task force, a COVID recovery task force, and set up a business concierge recovery support, which was really similar to, again, some of the other recovery coordinators' comments about businesses not knowing exactly where to turn, how to reopen, a lot of the technicalities for reopening as we were moving through the pandemic and towards fully reopening. And also joining in with other people in the broadband collaborative for planning and deployment, especially in our hardest to reach portions of our 4-county region. Next slide, please. Long term, we're looking at our sustainable recovery and resiliency plan, and that will be an addendum to the current SEDS. And we're operating, especially here in our 4-county region, with that is so dominated by innovation makers, startups, and sole proprietors, that supporting them and that the retail and arts and culture and local services can be such a key factor in attracting new investment and also attracting the workers that we will need in order to expand and, well, really to retain and expand, because every person in every region in the entire state can agree that their businesses are telling them we can't find the employees we need. So the quality of place is critical and will be a big part of our resiliency plan. Also, sustainable regional destination management principles that support the tourism industry, but still honor the needs of the local residents, and infrastructure development supportive of workforce housing. That's attainable housing that is move-in ready, so that those people who are recruiting can actually succeed in recruiting quality talent. Next slide, please. So yes, I'm zipping through my presentation here since I'm already at a point over time, and I know there are other people. But you feel free to contact me if you're in Luna, Hidalgo, Catron, or Grant counties. Here's my email and my telephone number. And I'd like to add one more thing in closing. If you are in those counties and you're very interested in starting a new business, but you don't know exactly what it might be, we know that there are some holes in the marketplace that could be easily filled. And I'm just going to throw a few of them out there. They might be the same in every region as well, but commercial daycare facilities, appliance repair, all trades, plumbing, carpentry, electricians, all of the trades. Rental of construction equipment is another one that we really need. So if you think you want to start a business, please contact me. We'll get you lined up to go to one of our co-starter cohorts, and it'll help you move through a 10-week program that helps you successfully start your business and move forward. Thank you very much for letting us present today, and I appreciate those of you that are staying over time to hear my comments. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to move on to, last but not least, Northwest region. Eric, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, my name is Eric Jahadi. I'm representing the Northwest Council of Governments today, which is San Juan, McKinley, and Cibola counties. On our title page here, we have some items on the bottom: recover, restructure, resilient, and one of the things that is probably most pronounced is the restructure piece. Next slide. So a couple of things. One of them is that for the most part, each council of governments is also an economic development district. And from the New Mexico state side, we're also a planning district. So planning is really the foundation of the COG's purpose. And planning sometimes gets a little bit caught up on, theoretical side. And one of the things Northwest has been trying to really push is implementing the plan. So we started with, actually the recovery and resiliency planning process first. We chose to focus more on the recovery side, which is basically the ability to return to economic and business activities to a state of health and develop new economic opportunities that result as a sustainable and economically viable community. We organized plans with partnerships that were already established. We wanted to provide general themes and sectors, and we want the plan to roll up into the state's recovery plan. Next. So throughout the outreach process, there's the opportunity to establish goals, strategies, actions, and for us, the number one goal and action was broadband technology. I think it was Kenny that mentioned it earlier, through this pandemic, where everything was basically put on the shoulders of being able to, have quality broadband. You were really, the gaps in service were very evident. Number two, shovel ready, critical infrastructure and industry sites. Number three, workforce development, and number four, the health sector, were the top four goals and strategies that our outreach guided direction for. Next. In addition to that, one of the things the councils of governments is really trying to do is identify and define, what we're good at and what our capacity is. So we also asked, based off of, the current COG capacity, which things would you like us to focus on? So these 9 things are here. One of the things that is going to was actually number 9 on the list, but is one of our main focuses is Vista recovery team that we're going to try to get through Vista Volunteers. The broadband, we're working closely with New Mexico Do It on technical assistance program and funding opportunities. Shovel-ready sites has been focused on several sites, becoming Burlington Northern Santa Fe certified, including Gallup Energy Logistics Park, Pruitt Industrial Park, and Milan Industrial Park. And the workforce, been investing in an industry-led program called the Greater Gallup Industrial Workforce Program that provides a 10-week stackable certificate program that leads to a placement at local area-based employers. The program is starting its 3rd and 4th cohort class despite some of the setbacks of COVID-19. And then the health sector secured an EDA investment for San Juan Regional Medical Center for backup power and broadband redundancy, and are actively working with other area hospitals in similar investment needs. Next. So as far as implementing the program, which is, really something that the executive director of Northwest COG has, been working on for the past several years. There's a a tool called Build It, which is a multi-tool for community and economic development efforts. What it does is it integrates funding program timelines and requirements with conception to completion project delivery pathways. It's loaded with performance measures that gauge project impact and feasibility, and through project portfolios provides dashboards and other project data through a user-friendly, attractive web portal, search and filter options. Again, what we're trying to do is the regional recovery plan completed and being incorporated into the SEDS, which is the comprehensive economic development strategy. But in addition, it'll probably be intrinsic with all the other planning processes that are also being done parallel to these efforts. We're definitely interested in a matchmaking type of approach, matching local projects and needs with viable funding strategies rather than kind of perpetuating the chaos. We would like to be able to, be more of a guide and help people out with that process. So far, we've had 6 successful applications funded with CARES Act resources, and we're getting ready for the APREA funding that's rolling out soon. We're involved with hosting, along with EDA, a weekly meeting that includes all of the councils of governments, the recovery coordinators, and also other state and federal partners. We want to continue to apply, all of these efforts to all of our programs. I think just like anyone else that has had any impact from the pandemic, it's a lot of doom and gloom, but there is an opportunity to kind of rethink and restructure how business is conducted and, turn a negative into a positive. The revolving loan fund is going to be launched soon with close to $1 million of CARES funding. And as mentioned, we're in the process of securing 10 vistas to help us, roll out this work throughout the region. Overall, our approach has been to leverage the EDA recovery and funding to build more robust capacity with an innovative toolbox that can build back our economy better, as our economy needs a game-changing strategy to leapfrog ahead, not just return to the status quo. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Eric. Let me go ahead and I just want to thank you all for joining us during this webinar. I know we're a little bit over time, so I appreciate it. And I also want to thank each regional recovery coordinator for your time. And as I mentioned earlier, I know I went through a lot of information. I'll be sending out a copy of the slides and the recording, and it has all the contact information. So if you need to follow up, please do. With that, I'll go ahead and conclude our webinar, and thank you again.